You do not need a big keyboard to sound like you have a big keyboard. And if you don't know what I mean by that, then hopefully by the end of this video, you will. So let's go back a few steps and let me present you with a problem. The term bedroom producer isn't just a novel thing nowadays. Most people that make music probably have a home setup, usually in their bedroom, usually on a fairly small desk in a pretty limited space. In an ideal world, we'd all be working out of massive studios full of tons and tons of gear. But unfortunately, a lot of us just don't have that luxury. And with a lot of the technology available to us nowadays, a lot of that stuff isn't necessary to make music. But what you do need is something that you can make music with, like a MIDI keyboard on your desk. And, you know, you can play piano with that, you can play lots of different instruments, you can program drums. Basically, a MIDI keyboard is a pretty important part of any small setup. So let me ask you this question. Have you ever been shopping around for a MIDI keyboard and been looking at some of the 3, 4, 5 octave keyboards and been thinking, I'd love to have this, I'd love to have all of these keys, all of these notes, but I simply cannot fit this on my desk? If you have ever been in that scenario, then chances are you've probably ended up with something a little bit smaller, maybe something like this, the Novation Launchkey 25, or maybe something like the Novation Launchkey Mini, both of which are extremely good options, if we do say so ourselves, for making music at home. But there is always going to be that issue. You only have 2 octaves on a keyboard like this. So if I was just to sort of play something that I can, there is a fair bit of range on a smaller keyboard like this. It's not like you can't play anything on it, but the issues start to arise when you want to start playing things that are, you know, an octave lower, an octave below. Now, obviously, we can change the octaves. I have to then ride this octave up and down button, and it's not really a sustainable way of performing piano. And what we generally want from something like this is we want to be able to recreate some kind of realistic performance. We want to be able to play in our notes and come up with something that actually sounds like someone playing piano. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can get more range out of a keyboard like this. So enough talk, let's look at some of the things that you can do to get more range out of the keyboard. So the first thing I want to explore is scale chord mode. So to get to scale chord mode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift, and as I hold shift, all of these pads are going to light up. Now, this writing here on the bottom half of the keyboard pads says pad mode, so I can choose the pad mode here. I've activated scale chord mode, and now when I let go, I've got all of these blue pads here. And as I play these pads, you'll hear that there are a load of predetermined chords that I can play just with the pads. So the way things work on the Novation Launchkey is that this top line of pads in scale chord mode, these are your triad chords in whichever scale you are in. Then the second line are 7th chords. So when I press this down arrow, you'll see here it says top 7ths, so that bottom line has gone up, and bottom 9ths. So now I've got 9th notes. So now if I press down one more time, it will say top 9ths, bottom 6 9ths. So all of the chords are 6th, 9th chords. Now, if you want to change the scale or the root of the scale, all you need to do is hit shift and scale. This goes into your scale mode settings. You have a ton of different scales. So I'll scroll through them. Minor, major, Dorian, Mixolydian, Phrygian, harmonic minor, minor pentatonic, and major pentatonic. So I'm going to stick with C major, but what I'm also going to do is I'm going to change the root note to be F major, and the way I do that is by playing the actual F key on the keyboard. Now, scale chord mode can work with or without scale mode on. We've done a few videos on scale mode. Basically, scale mode will just make sure all of the keys that you play on the keyboard are in the F major scale in this case. Whether you have that activated or not, you can still use scale chord mode. So if I still want access to all of the notes on the keyboard, even if they're not in the scale, I'll just turn scale mode off. I still have those keys. So I can just play some stuff like this. Now we've already run into our first issue, and if you have a keen ear, you might have heard this. The octave in which these pads are playing in is the same as the octave I currently have engaged on the keyboard, and there's a very easy way of changing that. All I need to do is hold Shift, and I'll press down here, and as you can see, it says here chord octave -1. Now, if I let go of that and I play the same chords again, the chords are an octave lower. So that means I have these two octaves that I can use as like my right hand, and I've also got these pads that I can use as my left hand. And this will work with a sustain pedal, which I am using, and I can play things. And an important thing to note here, if you look at the screen when I play these chords, you'll actually see on the DAW that the notes are coming up separately as if they are being played separately. So you can record these in, and then if you want to make any changes, any adjustments to the notes later down the line, then it's super easy. Your DAW, whether it be Ableton, Logic, whatever you use, will recognize these as separate MIDI notes. So that's your first method, and you might be watching this and thinking, okay, that's all good, but I'm not really into using things like scale modes. I don't like being stuck in a particular scale. I might want to play something slightly different. I might want to go off-piste, and that's totally justifiable. You might just prefer to put your own chords in, and there's a very easy way to do that. So now if I hold Shift again, and this time I'm going to change the pad mode to user chord mode. So when I go to user chord mode, I do already have some pads engaged here because I've already put some chords into this keyboard. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to delete these chords. So if I hold this button here, all of these pads turn red. If I just press them, now I have a blank canvas. So now that I have these blank pads, what I want to do is I want to put some of my own chords into them. So you have 16 different slots which you can put your own chords into, and any chords you save to the keyboard, you can turn the keyboard off, plug it in somewhere else, and they will still be there. And the way to put the chords in is you hold the pad and you can simply press each note, and now that chord is programmed into the pad. And again, if I want to lower the octave, I can do that. If I want to bring it up, it's there too. You can input up to 6 notes in each pad. And just like that, I've already inputted 4 different chords into this, and again, I can just play them. And it's as easy as that. There's my left hand, here's my right hand. All of a sudden, I've got loads more octaves from my keyboard. And again, same as the scale chord mode, they do appear in the DAW as their separate notes, which is really useful. Now, I find these two methods to be a really nice way of extending the range of a smaller keyboard. Not just for using at home, but let's say you are performing and you're traveling and you can't bring a big keyboard with you, and you can only bring something like this, then it will be super easy to just quickly put your chords in, and then again, you can just play them left hand, right hand. It does just make it feel a lot more natural, and the really nice thing about the Launchkey is it doesn't just necessarily have to work with a DAW. You can also plug it into an external MIDI device and you can control synths and things. One other thing that's really cool about this method is that you can actually separate the MIDI output of the pads and the keyboard. So what you could do is you could route the pads to an external synth that you want to be the chords, and then you could route the keyboard to something else, and you could play a left hand, right hand thing with 2 different instruments, and you could route that in your DAW as well. I just think that's a really nice touch, a really nice way of getting a little bit more variation out of the keyboard. So those are the 2 different pad chord modes. Let's talk about some other ways that you can extend the range of your keyboard. Now, I've done a few short videos on fixed chord mode on our Instagram channel. If you haven't seen those, make sure to go follow us, check them out. Fixed chord mode is sort of similar to user chord mode in that you hold the button and you can input the keys you want to be in the chord. What is different is you are only limited to one chord, and whatever note you play, that will be the root and it will transpose up. So if I just do a big C chord with fixed chord mode, and you also notice that you are not just limited to 6 notes in fixed chord mode. You can put quite a few notes in there. So now when I play this C note, all of those notes are going to play. But if I go up a note, it's going to transpose up. It's not really a super musical feature on its own, but used in the right context, you can actually get a lot out of it and really extend the range of your keyboard. So here is a good example. If I use fixed chord mode and I also turn on the Arpeggiator, when I hold the note now, the Arpeggiator is going to work alongside fixed chord mode, which in the context of what we're talking about in this video is really useful, because it basically means you can make arpeggios that span beyond the keys available to you right in front of you with just the press of one key. So for example, if I make a new fixed chord, but I'm going to do it over like 3 octaves. So I'm going to go down an octave, hold fixed chord mode again, and I'm going to overwrite. So I'm going to go C1, G1, C2, G2, going to go up an octave, C3, G3, C4, and G4. It's a really boring arpeggio. It's a root and a fifth, but when I play it now, I can now arpeggiate between 4 octaves on a 2-octave keyboard, which is really nice. And if I also turn on scale mode and I change the scale to, let's say, C, it doesn't really matter, but C minor, because it's just the first and the fifth, and I go back and I turn on latch mode on the Arpeggiator. Now, if I go to I don't know if you can hear what's happening right now, but as I go up each note, scale mode is transposing down each interval to fit within C minor. So you can actually do really cool arpeggios with just one note. Nice. Last thing I'll say on that is you can use it with the Arpeggiator off. So if I wanted to do some big chords, I'm just going to change the fixed chord. I'm going to go down to this octave. I don't really know what this chord is going to be. So as you can hear there, basically as I switch between the notes, there are certain notes that are shifting up and down based on whatever scale that I am in. This method doesn't necessarily offer you the same sort of left and right hand capabilities that the pad chord modes offer, but what you can do is you can quite easily play in chords that span beyond the octaves available to you with just one note into the DAW, which is really helpful. And as you can see on the screen here, all of those notes, again, register in the DAW as separate entities, so you can go in and you can edit things after you have recorded them in. So all of those solutions are pretty accessible features on the Launchkey that are designed for those purposes. Now what I want to show you is more of a workaround using some of the custom mode features that the Launchkey offers. If you are not familiar with custom modes, basically what you can do, you can save 4 custom modes that you can customize on your computer, put them on your keyboard, and you can use them very easily. And with custom modes, you can send different MIDI messages, keystroke combinations, etc., etc. You can customize it however you like. What I'm going to use custom mode for is an extra octave's worth of keys. So I'm going to open components. If you're not familiar with Novation components, it's basically the companion software that comes with any Novation product, and you can go into components, you can update your products, you can add custom modes, you can tweak different features depending on what you have. If you own anything like a Launchkey or any other Novation product and you're not using components, I highly recommend you try using it because it adds so much to your product. So let's open up components. We're going to click Manage Launchkey, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom mode. My custom mode is going to be a pad custom mode, and by default all of these pads are already going to have messages assigned to them. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take out all of the colors, and this is kind of the closest thing to a blank canvas at this point. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to add notes to each of these pads. I want it to be the C1 octave, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make the keys, I don't know, I'm going to make them blue. My plan with this custom mode is to recreate the chromatic keyboard that comes on the circuits. If you ever used a circuit, there is like a little light up pad keyboard that you can use, and I really like the way that works. I'm quite familiar with it. I'm going to basically recreate that on the Launchkey. So let's skip forward a little bit in time here. Okay, so what I've done here is the bottom line of pads are all of my white keys and they will be blue, and my top line are the black keys of the octave and they are pink. So the next thing I need to do is I'm actually going to save this custom mode to my computer. I'm going to save it as extra notes. Now the reason I'm doing this is because if I want to use this custom mode on a different Launchkey anytime, then it's on my computer, I can just transfer it on. So I'm now going to send to Launchkey and I'm going to put it onto custom mode 1. And I'm going to overwrite custom mode. So now when I hold shift and I go to custom mode 1, which is this one, custom 1, I'm now going to see what I've just made on the computer reflected on my keyboard. Great, so I've now got an extra octave from C1 to C2 on my pads. So now if I wanted to play a left-handed part down in that octave and I wanted to play a right-handed part right at the top of my keyboard, then I can do that pretty easily. And so on. Now, of course, it's never going to be quite the equivalent of having more keys, but it's a really great way of extending the range of your keyboard if you do not have that available to you. And there you go. There's a few ways of making your small keyboard bigger. The Launchkey 25 and the Launchkey Mini are both really great options if you have a smaller desk setup or you just generally don't want a bigger keyboard. They are amazing utilities for music making. They have so many features built into them that work amazingly with DAWs like Ableton, Logic, Cubase. Everything is packed into this keyboard. But if you want to just make a little bit more out of it and you want to get a little bit more range out of it, then I really hope that some of the ideas that we've explored in this video have given you some good ideas of things you can do at home. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, do let us know in the comments below. If there's anything else you'd like to see us talk about, then again, let us know. And hopefully you've come away from this with some new, fresh ideas of things you can do with your smaller keyboard. I've been Vinny from Novation. Until next time, see you soon.